Hi there, Tara here with Quilts Love. I have a very exciting project that I'm working on today. My little guy is getting bigger. His birthday's just around the corner and he has outgrown all of his coolest dinosaur t-shirts. So we're going to celebrate his birthday and I'm going to make a memory quilt that includes all of those shirts I just cannot bear to get rid of. I grabbed some fabric from my stash. I only have a little bit of time, but I got one very large latte. So let's get started. If you've been around my channel for any length of time, you've probably seen that I always stabilize t-shirts when I'm working with them for a memory quilt. No different today, except today I am going to be using a slightly different product. So I'm going to use Heat and Bond. This is a Heat and Bond Light. I'm going to fuse it to the back of the t-shirts because I'm going to use them in an applique setting today. Rather than cutting them square and piecing them in like typical material, I'm going to applique them to the quilt blocks that are going to be set into the final quilt arrangement. It'll go just a little bit faster. It adds a little different effect because I don't have to use a square piece of this t-shirt. I can cut out the coolest parts and just applique those. Heat and Bond is very easy to use. All you have to do is peel off the back and press it down to the area where you want to apply or applique that piece of material. So I'm going to get started and I'll show you the whole process as I go through. So you can see what I'm doing here. I have used my scissors to cut out a piece of the Heat and Bond, and it has two distinct sides. One side is really bumpy. That's the glue side, and then the smooth side is where you'll use your iron. I have taken the t-shirt that I want to use. I'm only going to use just the dinosaur and the tough guy graphic. So I'm going to lay this face down. And on t-shirts, especially when they're printed, you can usually see indentations in the back of the shirt where those graphics are applied to the front. So I'm just going to line up my Heat and Bond to cover the area that I want to use. My iron is already hot. And then when you apply this Heat and Bond, you apply your iron, press it down until that glue is fully adhered. And then you can move over to a little different spot. Make sure you get those corners really well. Make sure you hit all of the areas. I think the instructions say to apply for like 10 seconds to keep that heat on there for that length of time. I'm going to just cut out the areas that I want to keep. Now, because I am going to applique this and I will do a stitch around the outside, I want to save myself about 1/4 of an inch around the perimeter of what I want to keep. You'll see keeping that paper backing on there is going to really help while you cut it out, because it just adds a little bit of rigidity to the fabric that might otherwise be difficult to cut. And if not difficult to cut, it would definitely curl once you have it cut out. So there, I'm just slipping off the paper a little bit on the back. It should be fine. The good news about using jersey t-shirt type material in an applique project like this is that jersey t-shirt types materials do not fray like a cotton would fray. So you can have that raw edge and you don't have to worry about that edge fraying over time. So it'll stay, it'll curl a little bit and it'll soften up a little bit, but it's not going to unravel like a regular cotton would. So I'm just going to apply this onto one of my blocks, which I'll have cut out here in just a few minutes. I've got a nice stack of t-shirts still to do, so I'll get those backed and then I'll show you the next step. Our project today is going to be made with strip sets. So I'm going to cut the strips out here. I'm going to need 3 from each color for a total of 12. And then they'll be used with the setting blocks that already have the t-shirts applied to them. As a reminder, you can do this project too. I'll have a link in the description box below. You can run over to my website, download this free pattern, and make a project for yourself. All right, I've got all of my fabrics cut. I've got all of my applique items cut out also. I want to show you a little bit about how you're going to use the heat and bond. So first of all, you'll have that paper backing still to deal with. So I'll just press it over and bend it back, and then you'll see that paper backing just peels right off. Then you can position those items, the applique items, wherever you want them within your block. Make sure you leave that 1/4 inch around the perimeter because you'll have that in your seam allowance. The next thing we're going to do is iron, but I want to be very specific that you must iron from the back. If you touch your hot iron onto the ink that's applied to the front of the t-shirts, or vinyl especially, you're going to melt that vinyl. So it's very important. You've got your paper peeled off. You've got the graphic positioned where you would like it to be, and then very carefully flip this over. Just double check all your seams, make sure everything still looks nice and straight, nice and lined up, and then you are going to press this from the back side to make sure that you don't ruin the graphic that's on the front of that applique. Anytime you're working with heat and bond, you always want to make sure that there is a layer between your iron and the glue on the back of the heat and bond. And you also want to make sure that you are never touching any of the graphic of your t-shirt with a hot iron. It's just so important that you don't do that. Not only could it really wreck your iron, but it could destroy the graphic on that shirt. So with that, whoop, my iron's telling me it's very hot. Okay. And then we'll flip it back over, and it is fused down nicely. I will still go around the perimeter of this graphic with a stitch. I'm going to go ahead and take care of the rest of these blocks, and then we'll get sewing. You can see I've got my 1/4 inch foot on, which I typically use whenever I'm quilting. I'm going to line the edge of my foot up just slightly over the edge of the t-shirt, and I have some matching top thread in. So this is a Superior, I think the color is Dolphin, and I'm just going to take some stitches and I'm going to stay right on the edge of the t-shirt. Now I will tell you that I'm using a straight stitch for what I'm doing here. You could also, if you look on your sewing machine, you have lots of options. I'm using a straight stitch for this today. You could use a zigzag stitch or an overlocking stitch. Either one would be totally fine. If you're using non-t-shirt material, so maybe cotton, you'll want to do that overlock stitch. That way you can catch the edges so they don't fray. But for just these regular t-shirts that I'm working with here, a straight stitch is fine. It's already fused to the backing, so I'm not worried about the t-shirt peeling up. The stitches will hold it down permanently because fusible backing is not laundry safe for the long term. And then, of course, I will be quilting over each of these too. Now that I've got my applique blocks edge stitched, I'm going to set those aside and I'm going to work on my strip sets. I have my fabrics with the print sides together, so right sides together, and I'm going to run a 1/4 inch seam down the length of the edge of the entire strip. All right, here we are. I've got my strip sets sewn together. I've also pressed them out nice and flat. I have this one lined up here on my mat. I always use a layout or a design. I use a design software, and I have created the layout for my son's quilt here. You can see all the different block sizes, and of course this will go into ultimately what will be the free pattern that you can download from my website, quiltspluslove.com. So I'm going to go ahead and cut now out of these strip sets. I'm going to subcut the pieces that I need, starting first with the longest pieces and then going down to the shortest pieces. So here we go. I'm going to line up my ruler here on my mat. Since my strip set is already lined up really nicely according to the grid lines of my mat, I don't have to take as much time adjusting every single cut because I already know that my material is going to be square to my ruler and to the grid lines on the mat. So I'm going to get these strips cut down to size, and then we're going to start assembling this quilt top. It's really that quick. Now that I've got the blocks sewn together, I like to put them on my design wall if the project is small enough. This particular one is. Some quilts you just have to lay out on the floor. But this one I'm going to put up here on my design wall. This gives me the opportunity to twist the blocks around, change the color placement, maybe swap one block for another. And then what I like to do is take pictures as I go with each layout to decide what I really like. And then I will step away from the project maybe for about an hour, go have lunch, go have a cup of coffee, and then come back to it. This gives you the opportunity to see that project with fresh eyes to make sure the layout that you've chosen is really the one that you want. And that's kind of where I'm at right now. So I'm going to go take a quick break. When I do come back to it, I'm going to stitch the quilt top together and it'll be ready for quilting just that fast. All right, the quilt top is finished. As you can see here, I have it loaded. I decided for this one, since it's from my baby, of course, I'm going to use a minky backing on the back of this quilt. My son really loves minky. In fact, one of the other quilts that I made for him with the minky backing is his absolute favorite. But since he's getting so big, it's getting a little small. This one will be quite a bit larger for him. So I'm going to go ahead and get this squared up and get it stitched up. And I'm going to show you what this quilt looks like when it's totally done. The quilt is finished. As you can see here, my little guy sure does love it. I think the applique turned out great. Those stitches are going to hold those t-shirts down, and of course that minky backing is really luscious. Check us out for a free pattern, quiltspluslove.com.